Okay, I'm back with part two. So we were just talking about the steps in the marketing research process, and I've broken them down for you here, and we will review each one in detail. But the first one is establishing the need for having a marketing research study in the first place, which we've already covered. We will learn how to define the problem. We will learn how to establish research objectives. We will determine the research design. We'll identify information types and sources. We'll determine the methods of accessing data. We will design data collection forms, determine the sample plan and size, collect the data, analyze the data, and finally prepare and present the final research report. So for this purpose, I've created a practical case study, which is the Laura Perez phone. I've now created a phone. I'm very technological. And you guys are the company that has to carry out the research. So we're going to be looking at this as we go through the class. I have decided that I want to expand outside of Europe with my new cell phone. Specifically, I want to go to South Africa because I like that country, and now I have an excuse to go also for work and go there frequently. So my company has sold other technological products like 3D printers and robotic kits, and that's what I'm more known for in that country. The product's name is the Laura Perez phone LRT S16X, and the price is $495. You, as the research company, research consultants, you need to carry out research to, 1, assess brand awareness. 2, you need to determine the market saturation, whether there's an opportunity for a new cell phone or not, and what my core target will be. So let's begin. As we know, we've established the need, so now we're going to step 2, which is defining the problem. Defining the problem is the most important step, because if you don't define the problem properly, obviously the research process is going to be carried out to resolve a different problem. So problem definition involves specifying the symptoms, and the symptoms here are not, I have a runny nose, but the symptoms here are what is the problem that you want to conquer. The symptom for me is we are expanding into another country. That is our symptom. Itemizing the possible causes of the symptoms. In my case, I want to go to that country. There's really no possible causes except for the fact that I want to expand. But if it was a problem, related to a problem where there's a drop in my sales, for example, it could be that a possible cause of the drop in my sales, which is the symptom, is that Amazon no longer carries my product, for example. And then step 3 is listing the reasonable alternative outcomes or courses of action that you may take when you have to approach this problem. So, for example, let's look at my phone, and we see that in South Africa, there is little to no brand awareness in the cell phone category. There is in the 3D printers and robotics category. I don't know if there's room for a successful launch of a cell phone in the South Africa cell phone market, and I don't know who my core target is. So I have defined my problem, and now we have to actually go about and carry out the research. The next step is to determine the research objective. And the research objective identifies the specific pieces of information that you need in order to solve the problem. Here, it's important to be as specific as possible, just like with determining the problem, defining the problem, because this is going to be important for you as the research consultants to be able to find a proper solution. You have to see what type of information you need. Will it be qualitative? Will it be quantitative? What kind of qualitative, if qualitative, will it be? How much money do you have in order to carry out the research? So one of the other steps that's important in this aspect is creating a hypothesis. I'm sure all of you know what a hypothesis is from when you were studying in high school and you were doing your science class, but a hypothesis is a possible outcome of the problem at hand. Like I said, so one of the problems that could be for a drop in sales for a company that has a product in the market and already exists. Could be that now Amazon is no longer carrying their product. This could be a hypothesis. And obviously, the most important role of the hypothesis is that it suggests variables to the person that is designing the research, to the research consultants. And this helps them create a course of action or an action plan in order to carry out the process. If we think that Amazon could be one of the possible causes, then obviously our research will have to be carried out studying many different variables related to Amazon. But if perhaps it isn't an issue due to Amazon, but we don't take it into account when we create our hypothesis, then obviously we won't be able to analyze Amazon as in detail as if we had said that that was one of our possible results. So getting back to my phone, here we can see the difference between a research question, research objective, and hypothesis. So for example, here, this is my phone. What should I put as the retail price for my phone? My research objective is to forecast sales for my phone at 3 different prices, for example. And my hypothesis is, I believe that sales will be higher if I sell it at this price instead of at another price. Another comparison that we can do is, for example, the question is, what type of cosmetics do men use to look handsome? The researcher objective is to determine the competition and market share of men's cosmetics. And the hypothesis is that we believe that these 2 brands, Fair and Lovely Men's Active and Fair and Handsome by Emami, are the 2 leading brands in this category. A third comparison that we could look at is the research question, why is Amity's cafeteria always so badly criticized? The research objective is to determine what is happening, the cafeteria, for them to have to be criticized so bad, and the factors that affect the earnings, because obviously their sales are going down. And a possible hypothesis could be that there are long queues, the staff is highly unorganized, people leave, and the quality of the food, it tastes bad, it looks bad, and it's very unhealthy. So this would be step 1, 2, and 3. Step 1 is establishing the problem. Step 2 is defining the problem. Step 3 is the research objective together with the hypothesis. Next step, step 4. Here we have to decide what kind of research design you are going to create. There are different types of research. The exploratory research is defined, it's more of an informal manner and unstructured of gathering data. For example, going to the library and getting out all of the books that are about specific type of category of sale, or visiting your competitors one day out of the blue and analyzing the in-store experience, or looking at your company sales to see if there's anything that stands out there. It's more unstructured, it's more chaotic. So that doesn't mean that you won't be able to use it effectively. It just means that it's exploratory. And that's what it means, is that it's to explore something in an unstructured and undefined manner. Descriptive research is quite different in the way that it is not, we don't compare it and think of it as something organized or unorganized, structured or unstructured. It's created to answer a set of specific questions, specific variables that are needed to know in marketing. And these are the questions: who, what, why, and how. And I would even say where. It's the same questions as a journalist. You always want to know the why, the who, the why, the how, the where, and the when. That's exactly what descriptive research design is composed of. And then causal research design is that it allows us to determine the cause and effect of a specific behavior or product, etc. And this is conducted by controlling various factors to determine which one is causing the problem. Sorry, I didn't turn off my phone. When we for example, take a focus group and suddenly we change one variable in the product, they can tell us what they think once they have tried out the product with the change that we've made. So that would be a different kind of causal effect research. Now we look at my phone. What would we use when we determine the research design for my phone going into the South African market? Well, we would definitely need to look at secondary data, because we could use data that already exists. For example, market research studies that have been done in South Africa, consumer behavior studies, etc. We could look at exploratory research as well. For example, examining the cell phone market sales, examining industry sales that we have already at our fingertips, and then descriptive research design, where we actually are creating something specific to answer the questions that we had just talked about, the who, what, when, where, why, in order to define my core target, in order to define how they will behave, in order to define whether or not they will want to buy my product. That's step 4. So what else can we see next? Basically, as I explained to you, there is different types of data that is available to a researcher, and secondary data, which I've just discussed in the prior slide, actually refers to data that is available from marketing studies that have already been carried out. And primary data refers to data that you collect specifically for your research purpose. So what could we think of when we think of secondary data? That could be marketing research consultancy companies that have already done consumer research in a specific category in a specific country, or even like we were looking at last week, knowledge-based studies, like for example, a doctorate study that is carried out in South Africa to see the technological trends in the South African market. These are the kind of things that you can use as secondary data for your marketing research. And then primary data, as I explained, is something that you are creating specifically for your purpose. So if we look at my phone, the primary data, which is going to be the research carried out specifically to tackle the questions, will be used as well as secondary data, which will be the research that was used to tackle another problem. What do you guys think we could use as primary data? Primary data could be, for example, the research that we will be doing with the consumers to determine consumer behavior, to determine our core target. Secondary data could be information that is provided through Nielsen, which is a global data company about, like I said before, the technological trends in the South African market. Step 6 is, once that you have determined the type or types of information, you have to determine the methods of accessing that data. There are many different types, and they're actually not all covered here because this is changing increasingly more and more. But basically, it's how you can access data. You can access external secondary data via online. That's the number one. Nowadays, they're usually very easy and quick to retrieve. Then you also have internal data, which you can retrieve on your intranet, for example. Most of these data, it's very easy to access now with internet, obviously. And to collect primary data, you also have other types, but for example, telephone surveys, mail surveys, door-to-door interview, etc. There are new data collection methods like SSPS software, which I will touch upon very briefly, that also help in accessing the data. So for my phone, we're going to collect the data via online surveys. We're going to use information processing technology, and we're going to use external sales report that we're going to access online. That is step 6. Step 7 determines exactly the kind of information that we're going to be developing and the forms of the information that we're going to get. So specifically, we're going to talk specifically about questionnaires, because these have to be designed in a very specific way depending on the kind of information that you require. A questionnaire can't be done just saying, well, I'm going to use Google Forms and I'm going to put 5 questions and that's it, open-ended, or yes, no questions. There's a lot more involved when creating these questionnaires. For example, there are structured questionnaires, which are predetermined. You have A, B, C. That's it. There's no other option. There's no other choice for you to make or to list. But then there's unstructured questionnaires where you have open-ended questions, and these are usually used for qualitative research. Remember, qualitative, quantitative. And this will provide the researcher with information that is going to be very useful, because you can actually have unstructured questionnaire that are both open-ended and both yes, no. So from one survey, you can get information that will have percentages and will be numerical, but you also have a section that will be dedicated to something that is more quality oriented. And then there's also 2 different ways of approaching the research. One is disguised, where the person who is responding doesn't know the object of the study. So in my case, they wouldn't know that Laura Perez is launching a phone in South Africa. But there's also the version undisguised, where the respondent knows and is fully aware of exactly what study is being carried out. For example, this can make us think of medical studies where the participants know what is being studied and who is the company behind that market study or that clinical study, but they don't know what they're being given. One is being given the placebo, one is being given the actual medication. But it is undisguised. The respondents, the participants know who is carrying out that study. So if we look at my phone, coming back to my phone, we will create a questionnaire developed for online surveys, and we will use a structured format as opposed to unstructured. So it won't be open-ended. And we'll have disguised, because I don't want my competitors in South Africa to know yet that I am considering entering their market. So this is step 7, designing the data collection forms. And I'm going to take another break, and I'll be right back with my next video.